Over spring break this last week, I had the opportunity to go hiking with some friends at Point Reyes National Reserve, overlooking some of the dramatic coastline of the Pacific Ocean. The day we decided to hike, this was a perfect day in every sense of the word, until just as we're getting out of the car, parking the car, getting out of the car, all of a sudden this huge fog rolls in just as we arrive after 2 hours of driving. Since we had driven those 2 hours to get there, we decided to go for it. But the fog just got worse. And so we could really see nothing except the trail in front of us and a few feet on either side of us. But we kept walking. 10 miles we hiked. Trouble is, I had no clue what I was looking at because I was looking at nothing but fog. I had never been there before, but one of my friends had. So as we walked, he would describe what he had seen, what he could remember of the hike when he saw it before. He would describe the bay falling off on one side into the ocean, into the bay rather, and the ocean on the other side of us, the sea, the coast already also falling down there into the waves. The rocks, the little rock islands crashing, where the waves are crashing and sending up that amazing spray. He would describe it in detail. And there's not a lot else to talk about on a 10-mile hike. But I got to tell you, it kind of worked for me. It really did work for me. I would have never known all that was out there. And all of a sudden, as he's talking, I could start to smell some of the smells of the ocean, like the seals out there. And after a while, I could hear something, at certain points at least, something of the surf crashing. But that was all I had. But he made that view known to us as we walked. He helped us to know what was out there, even though we couldn't see it. And then it came for me to just trust that he was accurate, that he was right, to trust that I was surrounded by a very real sea that was just so beautiful, even though I could not see it. I did enjoy the hike, actually, trusting what was out there and seeing it through his witness. God is mercy. So announces the second reading today, in a phrase that could probably summarize the whole of the Scriptures. God is mercy. This Wednesday, as you heard announced, the Catholic Student Center celebrates our annual confession marathon. Between 2 and midnight or even later, priests from all over St. Louis, some of the finest men I know, are available to you, are available to celebrate confession with you, to help you know something that was there all the time, that's with you and around you and within you and above you and underneath of you all the time, but that sometimes we just quite can't see or believe is still true. I would propose to you that it could be a wonderful experience to give yourself, to choose to join us this coming Wednesday. But I want to be clear. You don't have to come. You don't have to go to confession. You don't have to. So many of us have this notion that we go to confession to get God to forgive us, to get God to be merciful to us. But that is what God does. Mercy is what God does. Mercy is who God is. God is mercy, which is to say that mercy is always available to us. Forgiveness is ready and available all the time. There's nothing you have to do, nothing you have to do ever to be forgiven, to win God's favor, to get God back in your court? Nothing. No matter what you have ever done, God never left your court. God is mercy. It's who God is. Mercy is what God does. One of the biggest issues the church has with the sacrament of reconciliation, which is confession, is that people think they have to go to get forgiven, to get God to forgive them. But we dare not forget what this text makes so clear this morning, and what Jesus makes even clearer in the way he lived his life from the beginning, the first gasp for breath on this earth he took as a baby, until the last gasp of breath he took on the cross. All he did was mercy. All he did was mercy. It is simply not possible. It is not possible for God to hold a grudge against you, to punish you, to treat you poorly because of what you did when you were 16 years old that you never told anybody. God cannot go against God's own nature. God is mercy. Period. End of sentence. Do not go grasping and clawing into God's presence ever to win God's favor. You never lost God's favor. You can't lose God's favor. We do not go to confession to get God to forgive us. We do go to confession to open ourselves to that forgiveness that was always around us all the time. We do go to confession to see through the fog of our guilt and our shame, to see through the fog and to know what was there all the time by somebody who's a sinner like us, finite like us, fallible like us, who at some point in his life also came to see that view of a merciful God. We go to confession because right now, at this point in my life, I need to remember the nature of God is mercy. And in this little moment between me and this other sinful human being who represents the whole universal community of believers to me, in this little moment, I want to celebrate. I want to celebrate that mercy and make it utterly available to me. You see, there are places in my heart I find that mercy has never really reached. It's been there for me on every level, but there's places I haven't let it reach, not because God's not merciful, but because of my obstinacy and my ego. And I got to say, there's something for me in the telling of my sins to a fellow sinner that gets it down in there, it seems to me, down into me, this mercy, and that helps me befriend those demons I reflected on with you on the first Sunday of Lent. We all have our demons, and they fill this house, and they're not meant to be destroyed, but they're meant to be befriended. And those things that are truly wrong with me, I have to learn how to bow before. And I don't know about you, but when I put those into words in front of another human being and swallow my pride and my ego enough to say it out loud, nothing, hardly anything I can imagine would help me more to make friends with that demon and to take its gift. What it's been trying to tell me all the time, nothing until I put it into words for another human being, as hard as that is. No, we don't have to go to confession. We don't. But I guess my question to you is, why not? Why wouldn't I go when the fog of my guilt and my shame keeps overwhelming me? I'm telling you, There's nothing like it in the whole world. It's simply not possible for God to hold a grudge against you, to punish you, to treat you poorly because of what you did when you were 16 years old. God can't do that. I suspect that that's perhaps why our Pope Francis just announced a new holy year for the church that begins this December. It was just announced this week. It's an unexpected and major step for a pope who takes a lot of unexpected and major steps. To call something like this, because it usually just happens every 25 or 50 years for special occasions, since the 1300s actually. But he said it this way. He said, I got to thinking, what does the world really need? What does the world really need most right now? And his answer rang clear as a bell. The world needs mercy. The world needs mercy. And so, our Holy Father, Pope Francis, is calling the entire universal church to a holy year of mercy. In his words, of this we are certain. No one can be excluded from the mercy of God. No one can be excluded from the mercy of God. The church is the house that welcomes all and refuses no one. Its doors remain wide open so that those touched by grace can find the certainty of forgiveness. The certainty of forgiveness. It's our conviction about that that has us every Lent put a big sign over these chapel doors. Because it's just true. All sinners welcome. Pope Francis is putting that sign above the whole universal church. All sinners welcome. He concluded, better must be the love of the church expressed toward those who are sinners. It's no longer a worthiness game, my friends. We're not going to play those worthiness games anymore. And if any priest or teacher tells you ever that you do not belong or that you are not worthy because of any choice you ever made or anything about you or who you are, stand tall and challenge him. And if you ever go to confession and the priest starts to make you feel worse than when you came in here, stand up and say, Father, I'm praying for you. I got to go. I'm serious as a heart attack. Do not take that. There's no room for that in the Church of Jesus. None. Nobody has the right to make you feel bad for who you are or what you've done, ever, no matter what you've done. Too many in our world, and too many in our church, frankly, have shamed us. They've done a darn good job shaming us for our weaknesses and our mistakes. They have told us verbally or non-verbally that not only did I do a bad thing, but I am bad. I am unworthy of anybody's love or life. And confession is the church's way of making sure we don't believe that junk anymore. We don't believe it anymore. And that in the end, you can forgive yourself as surely as you have been forgiven. And while it is true that you may lose a friend or two over the years because of their imperfect love for you, you ain't losing God. You ain't losing God. You may have friends, you may have parents who judge you and shame you for what you did. But that ain't God. That ain't God. So that every confession, this little moment between you and this fellow sinner who represents the church to you, who represents the merciful God to you, becomes this little mini party, this little mini celebration of the reality of this love and mercy that was there all the time. I just couldn't feel it. That's why it feels so good to go. That little moment between you and this other human being, it's a dry run for heaven. Every confession gives you reason to forgive yourself and not do that stuff that others have done to you, to yourself anymore. Every confession is a clear reminder of the very nature of God. This is not a God you have to placate and please to get what you want. This is a God who is only mercy. Every confession is not another way that I can beat myself up for my flaws. But it's actually a way to be truly kind to myself. It's a way to be truly kind to myself and to let myself receive this amazing, always available mercy, forgiveness. It was there all the time. I just couldn't see it. Like that fog that was blocking my view of it was truly out there all the time, but I couldn't see it because the fog had rolled in. That's why I go. That's why I need to go. I don't go to get God to forgive me. I need to go because I want to know that mercy in my bones. This is why I want you to think about coming this Wednesday and celebrate this mercy with us. It'll be worth it to you. You are worth it. The priest will only be doing what my friend was doing while we were making our way in that all-encompassing fog. He'll be telling you the ancient words, and with a simple gesture, the words, I absolve you from your sins, and the simple gesture of the laying on of hands. What my friend was telling me the whole time we were walking those miles. We need people in our lives who will do that for us, who will bring that reality just that much closer. Because really the truth is, on any given day, at any given time, it might be really hard for me to get to that. On the way back from the point of Point Reyes, the fog did start to burn off. And I began to see what he had seen all the way. And this time I knew it with my own eyes. I knew what he knew. I knew it was all around me all the time that I just couldn't get at. Something of this vast sea of mercy. It's so powerful to finally get that. To finally begin to believe that God is really like that. That God is mercy.